First up is some stuff with China. And the first one is that China plans to release some of their metal reserves. These include things like copper, aluminum, zinc, a lot of the commodities that we see, the prices that have been skyrocketing. And part of it is to help alleviate price pressure by flooding more supply, then it kind of equals demand. So the price will come back down. It's not so overvalued anymore. And they're trying to lower their factory gate price, which are really just kind of like an early stage in the manufacturing process of how they need to pay what it costs to produce their products. It's at a 13-year high, but China has right now said that they're planning on doing this in the near future. So they didn't give a specific date, and we don't have any data on the size of their stockpile. So there wasn't any like clear plan of like this date, this much. So we don't know how much it is, how much it's going to be, when it's going to be, right? And we're not 100% sure what the impact is going to be of this. Copper itself is up 67%, which is used as a macroeconomic indicator because copper is so widely used across production and manufacturing. If the price of copper is going up, it kind of signals that there's more demand in the market. There's more pressure on producers to build things, or that prices are going up and there's a shortage of copper. Right? It's kind of used to gauge that. So that's up pretty big. So China's decisions to do this are definitely could definitely be very helpful to kind of alleviate some of this price pressure. But right now, the London spot prices for aluminum, they were up 5% in June. Anyway, despite this news. So that's why we're saying there's no guarantee. It depends on what traders think is going to happen. It depends on when they actually do it and how much they do. So, but they have been in talks to do this. Some fears, though, with this are that they could create super cycles, right? Where you have a shortage of a commodity and then basically you dump a lot of it into the market. But by dumping lots of the stockpiles, all of a sudden, when things recover and go back to normal, you have less because you've depleted some of your stockpiles, right? Which could then cause another price spike demand because all of a sudden now you need a lot more, you need to buy lots more. So it could create these giant cycles of huge varying prices as we try to normalize and get back to normal manufacturing and transportation operations. The second one is some big news. China is sending their astronauts to their own space station. It's really cool. So this is going to happen on Thursday, which I believe actually just happened now on that part of the world because it's Thursday, I believe, over there. And this is called Tianhe, I believe, is the name of the space station. This was a space station designed solely by the Chinese. So it wasn't a joint venture with other countries. They did it separately from the International Space Station, completely done on their own. It's still under development. They've been running a couple missions to put a couple of pods up there with food, supplies, all the stuff they're going to need. And over the next 2 years, they plan about 11 missions to keep bringing their astronauts up there, keep working on the space station, setting everything up, figuring out all the logistics and everything like that. So it's definitely pretty cool. It is obviously a space station that is rivaling the International Space Station, but the thing is, to their credit, is they did it all up. And, that does add a lot of credit to China's government and what capable of doing because they don't necessarily have the same voting cycles. They can kind of stand agendas and policies longer. They don't really disclose a lot of the funding information for these programs, so we don't actually know how much money's there or where it's coming from necessarily. Not to say there's anything fraud in that, just to say that we don't have any kind of idea. So it is pretty interesting to see this and for them to make really big strides. It's definitely something interesting to see and to know about because when we're talking about the tech race between other nations and the United States and other countries trying to contain China's development and growth and influence over the economies and security of the world, right? This is definitely something to watch. So this is definitely a win for China and definitely something very interesting and big news happening today.
Oh, I mean, that's incredible. I mean, the amount of effort that it took for the ISS space station that's currently up there in space has been like a joint effort from everybody, and for China to just like really just step it up with their ability to create their own. It kind of looks as if they're kind of dividing off and kind of making their own legacy with their own space station. That's
Yeah, it's definitely really cool. But then also remember that the Chinese government doesn't have to follow the same necessarily rules, and by that I mean you can just kind of fund whatever you want. You want to do a space project, you don't have to worry about the voters. You don't have to worry necessarily about policy. You get navigated through lots of complex regulation. So it is interesting, definitely for sure. But that's just to be noted that there is a different way of doing things around the world. So there's different allotments. Um, but I think it is still very cool, and it's gonna be interesting how this turns out because you'll have two international space stations orbiting the Earth, right, from two major powers at a time when they're kind of standing against each other. So in a way, so definitely going to be interesting over the next like 10, 15 years to see how the space race. Because China also landed its first, I think it's its first rover on Mars in the flatter bases that the United States started landing in earlier on. But what they landed was more advanced in terms of for their first landing. So even though the U.S. has got 6 or 7 total landings on Mars, and they're moving around and doing all this stuff, they have 50 years of theater on Mars research, years of Mars research. But China definitely making big steps and putting stuff up there on the planet and doing so, pretty much self-contained in their own country. So definitely some big happenings today for sure.
Well,
That's going to be cool,
good job, China.
right? That's going to be cool because now they're able to do their own science experiments whenever they want and have less political loopholes and hoops to jump through, and could get stuff in space. And who knows what kind of scientific research and breakthroughs they'll be able to get through up there. So.
Does that mean China has now less access to Chinese scientists now that China is using their own scientists?
I mean, I don't know. There depends on what the science.
Give me the
programs
facts,
are.
Wyatt. Give me the facts.
Over 1 billion people, I believe they have a lot of scientists over there.
They also have lots of poor people in big swaths of portions of the country.
That's
so remember,
true.
like that's the same thing with India. Like India's got like 1.6 billion people, but that doesn't mean they have like the same proportional number more of doctors. So, but
One
that's it.
genius
When they had
has
the
to
Olympics in
be-
Brazil, and those walls to hide off the poor, towns and villages,
Yeah.
and everything looked really beautiful, but they go behind it, and you're like, oh, that's not so nice anymore.
Oh, hey, that's real life.
So, but it's like anywhere, they've got their
Well,
they've got their sides.
we'll definitely be following the story as it progresses because I imagine they're going to be experimenting. Obviously, that's the only reason to have a space station is to experiment in space. Any
Well,
other?
also because they're not part of NATO, they're not part of that space station, so it does give them a lot of restrictions. So if they want to do it and they're going to basically still stand the positions that they're standing, right? Then they're gonna have to do it themselves. So when and that is objectively, isolated. So still very, very cool. Launching your own astronauts up to your own space station. Cool.
That sounds dope. All right.